Hey, what's going on, guys? In today's episode, we're talking with Keith Burke, and he's going to be talking about his long-term real estate investing. He's going to talk about some of his home run deals and then also a few deals that he's learned lessons from so he can share with you and you guys can get something out of that.
Yep, and we're going to talk about how this cross-country coach and military reservist was able to acquire over 25 units in less than 9 years using a creative strategy. So stay tuned.
What's going on, guys? This is Dan Wynn.
And Mike Glassby.
And welcome to the Military Cashflow. And today we have Mr. Keith Burke on board, and he's going to be talking about his long-term investing and how he basically went from reserves, right? He's still in the reserves, and now he's owning and operating, buying and holding properties, which is very, very exciting. Keith, thank you so much for coming on. Really, really appreciate your time. Please, would you mind telling us a little about yourself and who you are, where you're from, and how'd you get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I originally grew up in Southern Illinois. I moved up here back in 2007 to run cross country and track on scholarship at a university here, and ended up staying. Always kind of knew I was going to get into business from a very young age. Didn't quite know exactly what it looked like, but I did know it was going to be somewhere in the realm of real estate. So at 23, as you know, the market was a little bit more attractive for buyers back around the 2011 range. Still, we were still kind of getting some of that residual good buys, and that a lot of properties on the market from the crash at that time. So I bought my first home in grad school, actually, as I was pursuing my MBA. And actually rented out the bedrooms to some buddies of mine from that had moved up here as well from high school to the Chicagoland area. And from there, I kind of knew that was going to be kind of a house and not a home, and it was going to be a long-term investment strategy along with kind of where I've gone, post that property. And once I was there for about a year, I decided to rent it out to students at the local university and move on to another one and kind of do the same thing, and then another one and do the same thing. And kind of throughout my 20s, that's really how I started to establish the growth. Was through kind of residing there for several reasons. A, the little bit more of an attractive rate on the property for for borrowing purposes, and then B, you kind of have time to get things prepared. You're not sitting there with vacancy and those average daily operating expenses or holding costs for each day and whatnot. So yeah, that's my story.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you're a cross-country coach, right? So you're that guy that makes everybody looks bad on the 2-mile time then, huh?
Not as bad as I used to make them look. I'm getting up there a little bit, but yeah. That's,
you're that sub 11-minute guy?
I was, yeah. 10:15 indoor was my record back in the day. Now I just try to hit around that there. But the new ACFT is going to level the playing field because it's going to kind of, there's not going to be as big of a spread from the guys that are just really good with just aerobic fitness. So yeah, I know you guys are excited for that, right?
Yeah, dude. I'm not trying to get my swole on, so.
Nice.
I'm glad I got out. There's a little bit of a sidebar here, but I'm glad I got out before that came, because the deadlift aspect, I personally feel a lot of people are going to get injured on deadlift. I know I have a bad back. I'd have been injured every test.
Yeah, no, I hear you. There's definitely mixed feelings on it. I'm actually the master fitness trainer course on another note here about a year ago, and I'm a little nervous about that too. But they've put in a lot of emphasis on form and stuff, and it's a hex bar. So I think if people are careful, it's maybe not going to be as bad as they think, but who knows? It's kind of like I kind of feel like I'm getting free deja vu of like COVID, because like nobody really knows what's going to happen with COVID either. Like nobody really knows what's going to happen with the ACFT. It's like kind of just there's both just such fluid situations. So
yeah, man, we'll see. We're supposed to be taking the actual like for real test, I guess, you know, as soon as this thing ends, basically. So we'll see how the numbers look. I did my my diagnostic. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I did get a 596. I'm just saying.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
so on that note, Keith, you talk about you're going through the Master Fitness Trainer course, or the Master Trainer Fitness course, and you've been in the Army Reserves for how long now?
I commissioned in May of 2011, so
Okay.
actually 9 years this month.
So 9 years. So you were going to college. What attracted you about the Army Reserves? You had two options as far as, you know, staying civilian, going reserves, or potentially going active. What about the reserves specifically kind of attracted you to that?
I wanted to go active duty at one point, but I just felt like there were so many other passions I had in the civilian side that I wouldn't be able to kind of fulfill a lot of those. In hindsight, I probably could have done like a 3-year active duty, then went reserve and still kind of did all of that. But, you know, hindsight's kind of 20/20. But, you know, at the time I knew I wanted to coach at least part-time at the college level. And I also knew I wanted to do things on the business entrepreneurial side. And, you know, it's if you're, you know, getting a new duty station every, you know, so often, it's kind of, it makes managing property a little bit harder. And especially when you're young and you don't have that experience yet, like some of those things sound way more scary than they are. Like that reminds me when we mobilized to Germany here a couple years back, and it was like, man, this is going to be really difficult managing my property. But you really don't realize how much stuff you do remotely until it happens. Like, so, you know, it really had very, very minimal impact on the business, me being, you know, an entire continent away. So, so yeah, I'm going off on a tangentious rant now about the management from another country. So feel free to interject anytime.
You're good, man. Hey, so a couple of things that you said that were very interesting that I liked about your opening, told your story at the beginning. You talked about you house hacking, right? You said you lived in a house and you were renting it. It seems like you said you were renting it out, correct, to someone else while you were there.
Yeah. So basically, you know, I was 23 at the time. So I had a couple buddies that had moved up north from Southern Illinois for grad school as well. And I just rented out the bedrooms to them. And yeah, I was kind of lived like we were in college and grad school type of things. As you guys know, with the military, sometimes we don't get that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So we talk about creative ways to build, to make additional cash flow. And that's exactly what you did. House hacking, like, just like you said, bought a house, rented out to some buddies while he was in college, and still made that rent. They paid down the rent, right? They paid down the mortgage, excuse me. And you were able to cash flow a little bit off of that. That's awesome. And then the other thing that you said was you bought your home knowing that it was a house, not a home. Can you explain that? Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So with any property, you don't want to have too much of an emotional investment. So I know a lot of people, I mean, me being a single guy, it's a little bit easier said for me than some people. You know, when you're married or have children on the way, you know, you want to have something that's maybe a little sexier, a little more curb appeal, you know, whatnot. So so yeah, I kind of look at everything that I'm going to live in now as it's an investment vessel. I'm going to be here for so many months and then I'm gone. You know, I haven't rented since I was like 18 years old. I was actually still in high school. Random story, but I had my own apartment like my senior year, and that's the last time I've paid rent to anybody. You know, it's just a very, very, it's a crazy thing to me that anybody would pay rent, you know, in most, you know, unless you're obviously like, if you're, you know, stationed somewhere, it's a little bit different. But on the civilian side, I can't see why anybody would ever pay rent. But yeah, so yeah, I've looked at every property as just an investment vessel, and then once I'm out, it's while I'm living there, I'm preparing it to be taken over by tenants, and then it's kind of on to the next one. So.
Deliberate planning, man. That's freaking phenomenal. That is phenomenal, especially because you're in a fixed location. That's the easiest thing to do. Just like you said, can't see if you're in a fixed location, you have a civilian job, you're a reservist, you're in one location. It's why not start buying rental properties and deliberately taking those action steps to acquire assets that will make you money, right? And you can live in it for a year, live in it for a couple of years, and then, you know, go buy the next one and rent that last one out. That's phenomenal.
Yep. And what's really important to kind of highlight there was I don't really know how much cross-country coaches make, but I don't imagine it to be very lucrative. So you found a way to get started with very little capital and then maximize that through house hacking or whatever the course is. So for everybody who's struggling, for everybody who's made the excuse, guys, it's not as difficult as it may seem, but it's important just to take action. That's good. Again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I like what you said about taking action, because I know a lot of people kind of wait and they don't get started. If I wish I would have got started a couple years sooner, even as a senior in college. I think I would I know I would be exponentially I'd have exponential more growth as far even just from a learning aspect than starting in your early to mid 20s. Times can be your friend or your enemy. I mean, if you start when you're in your 30s or 40s, it's the amount of growth you can get from a financing standpoint and just from a game standpoint is exponentially different than that a decade sooner. So yeah.
All right, so let's talk about. I love everything you're saying. So let's talk about some of the deals that you've done so far, right? So I know right now you're at around like 25 doors right now, correct?
Yes, 25 units. One's a multi-unit with 4 doors, and the other 21 are single family. Well, with the exception of one's a condo. 20 are single family.
All right, and so let's talk about some of those. Let's talk about one. Your first couple deals are an interesting deal that that you'd like to highlight, right? And then let's talk about why you've chosen the single family strategy, right? So it seems like the bulk of your properties are single family, are single doors. Let's talk about why you chose that route versus more multifamily units.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always been more of a fan of single family, and actually the one multifamily I bought made me more of a fan of single family, because it's probably been my worst deal. I mean, nobody bats 1,000, but I think the real benefit of single family is the retention rates. So in within your net operating income, you're going to see an effect from your turnover. So when you have to go in every 12 months to 2 years on average, and you have to paint, and you have to shampoo carpets if there's carpets, and possibly refinish floors and things like that. I mean, those put a big dent in your cap rate. And while the multifamily can be attractive at the right price, I definitely don't want any viewers to think that it's something that they should avoid at all costs or anything along those lines. But for me, in my experience, and keep in mind markets are different, of course, but I've always had way better results from single family homes, and a lot of that's based on the retention rate, like I mentioned. I mean, I've got a place that I've had tenants for 4, 5+ years, and when they stay, you can retain them through keeping the rents reasonable and keeping your response times reasonable as far as when things go wrong, and your cap rates are going to reflect that. So one of the deals that you mentioned, you wanted me to mention a deal that kind of stands out. There was a home I bought and keep in mind, rural Illinois is a little bit different than some markets some of you viewers might be listening to, but there's a deal I bought for $17,000 in Springfield, Illinois, and the home was a 3-bed, 1.5 bath, and after repair costs, it appraises around $60,000, which still like people are like, man, what some viewers out there in like Manhattan are like, what the heck? My car was $60,000, but anyway. So yeah, the after repair cost was $60,000. We put $12,000 into it, so it was $29,000. Rent was $800 a month, so our cap rate is about 22% on that property.
Right.
So that's one. And yeah, I mean, the market's so much different, and a lot of people, kind of when they hear those numbers, their thoughts are, oh, slums, things like that. But really, it's just how those markets are driven. I mean, it's a very, very just different type of market. I mean, I've got, in properties with those same numbers, I've got nurses, I've got teachers, I've got even some high school administrators that rent. I've got, it's the state capitol there. So I even have one woman that works for a congressman. It's just kind of a different style of living. There's not as much, I don't know what was that, with postcode envy? Is that what they call it? I don't know I don't know what the right terminology is, but there's not as much of the, worried about, having the nicest car in the driveway and having the 18,000 square foot home or anything crazy like that. It's a lot more simple way of life.
You hit on two really important things: the single family rental retention rates. We just had another guest on where we were talking about how a lot of people may try to reduce CapEx by putting more expensive material into the construction of the property. Very specifically, it was a metal roof, right? A metal roof may reduce your CapEx allocation for the month or your monthly flow, which could overall increase your cash flow. But at the same time, the insurance premium is going to be higher because it's a more expensive replacement part, right? That's just an aspect to consider. Now, retention rates, that's vacancy, that's turnover, that's another expense. When people think of multifamily, they predominantly think economies of scale, but it's something to consider. If it's 4 units or 10 units, but you have, let's say 80% vacancy and you have consistent turnover, those are all expenses to incur. So for those who are listening, always remember there's more factors to include, like retention rates, when evaluating properties. And the second thing you said was, for you, $60,000, you can get a whole home, an entire perfect investment.
$21,000.
Sorry, yes, $21,000. You can get a whole home worth $60,000. While meanwhile, there's other people in different markets spending $60,000 on their car. There's a lot of military servicemen and women spending $60,000 on their car or on their truck. So guys, just realize it's being purposeful with where you're placing your money. I mean, damn, 21,000. For some people, that's their signing bonus. It's $20,000. Like you guys
absolutely
got a boom and bam. So
well, and the banks are friendly. If you and sometimes I've had loans that get so small that I've had to package them with additional homes, just because the bank's like, man, we can't. What are we gonna do? Write you a mortgage for $15,000? So you sometimes you have to get a little bit creative. But another that kind of if I can lead on that. Another great deal that we made was there was a gentleman who had passed, and his family kind of didn't know what to do with the property. He had 3 on one block. One was in much need of repair. One was already occupied with a long-term tenant, and one was turnkey. The entire deal, they were asking like $120 for all 3 homes, and we ended up offering. We put an offer for like 92, I think, and we got it. But the great thing about that is, let's say, for example, we immediately started cash flowing on the one property, which essentially covered the daily holding costs of the other 2 while we did the repairs and found a tenant. So the great thing about that is as opposed to buying one property that needs a lot of work, and you've got 30 plus days to get your contractor in there, 30 plus days of you're paying vacancy, you're paying taxes, you're paying insurance, you're paying all these things. Where this immediately we were break even immediately just off the one that was occupied, and then the day we closed, having a great property manager is extremely important. I think my success is mostly his success, and his hard work and due diligence. But we were able to get a tenant in that property literally on the way back from signing the closing documents, because showing it during the closing process, all that stuff. So yeah, 2 of the 3 were occupied. Obviously, the day we closed and cash flowing, and it ended up working out really well. So that's another creative way to do things. If you say you don't have a ton of cash reserves around to take chances, then that kind of hedges that risk per se. So
yeah, that's definitely major. I love especially the average. It's something I had to learn too. Advertising the home before it's actually rent ready. I was going something similar, but I was renovating a property and didn't and didn't start advertising it until I actually had it finished. And kind of to your point, you can start advertising that and getting it tenant in before you even, before it's even ready to roll. So that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, people are creative by nature. So I mean, I've brought people into places that are like in disrepair and just been like, hey, use your imagination. Like, this is what we're gonna do here. This is what we're gonna do here. This is what we're gonna do here. And then I've taken them to say a property down the road that we've done and been like, yeah, just so you can kind of get a better feel for the type of work we do and how it's gonna look, and then just take them inside of that if they're kind of apprehensive. And then most of the time, most people are like, yeah, you know what, we got you here. We'll put down a deposit. We'll be in by the first of next month. So yeah, there's absolutely, I absolutely emphasize to people to show, to make sure.
Being creative is absolute key. You have to be creative, especially when you're dealing with scarce resources. I forget who says it, but it's not about the resources, it's about your resourcefulness, right? Something along those lines. Yeah. And as you start to scale, or as you start to try to find those gaps, you begin to leverage them. Like you just mentioned, property management was super instrumental in being able to balance all these portfolios, being able to get them built and everything else. So that's awesome. You got to be creative, and then you leverage when you need
to. So yeah, we talked about, you gave us some great, phenomenal deals, some home run deals, right? And talking about $21,000 deals worth $68,000. You're cash flowing, you're collecting in rent $800, which is like what, 1.5 rule or something like that, which is amazing. It's very, very hard to find nowadays. But let's talk about some of the lessons that you've learned, maybe some of the harder or more difficult deals that you've had, and what you've learned from them. Because we got a lot of newbie investors out there that are listening, and let's share some of that information with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So back to the multi-unit that I mentioned, that one, for example, the retention rates have been much worse. I've had one tenant that's been there for 3+ years. I think we bought it about 4 years. We bought that about 4 years ago. But the other 3 units, I haven't kept somebody for more than 12 months. It's been not the best investment. I mean, it's still, on paper, like I'm complaining, it's still over a 10% cap rate, but like, to me, that's like, man, I could be getting a 25% cap rate. And this thing's horrible, but it's still doing okay, but just not nearly to the extent of some of my other single family units. And I think one thing that I learned from that is don't get too, that was probably my first like buy on emotion. I bought that place for $80,000 and thinking, man, yeah, I can't go wrong. I bought it sight unseen as well. And I used a realtor, and, a lot of realtors, I don't think they intend to intentionally not have the buyer's best interests in heart and in mind, but I think sometimes they get a little bit, narrow-minded, like, oh, yeah, this guy can make money off of this. This guy can make money off of this. Because cap rates too, a lot of times when you go to buy something, you're going to see the cap rate actually listed on, wherever, Zillow, Trulia, whatever the case may be, in the property description, they're going to have some type of mention of a cap rate. And you have to be a little bit careful by that, because sellers can manipulate their cap rates a little bit. And I think that kind of doing your own due diligence. I bought that sight unseen, like I said. I just took the realtor's word. And I mean, if it was such a great deal, I think viewers might want to think about this in the future. If something's such a great deal, wouldn't your realtor probably buy it? And do it yourself? Yeah. So and that's not always the case, but because sometimes people just kind of going on the shift focus a little bit here. I think sometimes when people hear about what we do in the real estate game, and I think Mike, you probably have heard this as well, is they'll say, well, if it was that easy, everybody would just do it, And it's not really that easy. It's just if you do your due diligence, you're willing to put in the hard work, and you're willing to assume the risk, then yeah, the reward can be extremely high. But I get that it's not for everybody. Some people are far more risk averse and whatnot than others, and just it's not for everyone. But yeah, so I think the hardest lesson I learned was kind of was probably with the making the quick buy, kind of thinking, oh man, I don't want this to go away. I don't want to lose this opportunity on having my first multi-unit. I got a little bit too caught up in that in my younger, more novice days, and I jumped in and bought it. And when you buy things, it ties up financing for other things too, potentially. So there's based on your income, there's obviously a threshold of what you can borrow, and I really like to keep that. I really like to keep my cap rates in the 15 to 20+% range, and with that one hasn't quite proven that, but yeah.
Even in today's time, that's absolutely crazy. You're saying 15 to 20% cap rate. Well, really, really quick, can you just backing up? So we might have some listeners out there that are not unfamiliar with cap rate. What does that mean? Can you explain that in like layman's terms, what that means?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to any listeners, I would highly suggest that you become very intimately familiar with cap rates. But the basic layman's term is basically it's your ratio of net operating income to property price. So for example, for mathematical sake, let's say you're buying a property for $100,000 and your net operating income, which is your income after all of your expenses, after you've paid any type of insurance, any type of taxes, closing costs, all that stuff has to be factored in. What you annually take in. So if you take home $10,000 from that property net operating income per year on a $100,000 property, then your cap rate's 10%, which you can do fine, and you can make some solid income and build equity at a 10% cap rate, but it just takes a lot longer, and especially if you want to grow fast and have the bank continue to keep kind of lending you, throwing you loans and mortgages, then I think your cap rate needs to be higher in order to make that happen.
And some really important things to note: you know your criteria. That is so important, guys. Know your criteria. Now you're not going to, now that if it doesn't meet your cap rate of 15%, now either you need to renegotiate the price or potentially walk away, right? But you have to know your criteria, which also plays into finding a realtor that knows investing, right? So you're exactly right. There is a million realtors out there that don't necessarily look in the eyes of the investor. And that brings up the great question. If it was such a good deal, then why aren't you buying it, right? Now, obviously, yes, we're all constrained to resources, because honestly, if I could buy everything as a realtor, I would buy, but you only have so much that you can do at one time. But if they can't explain to you why it's a good investing or why they're not buying or whatever the case is, right, maybe you have to identify a different realtor who truly knows what your strategy is. Just because a realtor has a rental property, they could have been an accidental landlord, right? Or they could have done a small method. Now, if you're trying to do a delayed financing, a BRRRR, or anything else that's very creative, you kind of want a realtor that knows what they're doing, right? That may have that experience. So 2 good points there.
Yeah. So you learned some lessons there. The lesson learned there, pretty much what it sounds summed up to me. It seems like, don't buy on emotion, right? With that 4 unit, it seemed like that was something that you looked at and you were like, oh man, this is sexy. And then you kind of, I think you said you went sight unseen with that one, right?
I did. Yeah.
So
I was about 3 hours south of me, and I was just like, you know what? And taking action is super important. I definitely don't want any viewers to ever get gun shy on things. But I think it has to be a good mix. You want to
trust but verify too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There we go.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think all of us have fell victim to that at some point as investors down the road. I mean, we've kind of had our ups and downs and maybe didn't verify before we trusted too much or whatever. I know I've dealt with it. I'm sure Mike's dealt with it as well. So it's just one of those learning experiences. So for those out there listening, this is your first time getting into an investment. Just like Mike said, just like Keith said, hey, if your realtor's saying, oh yeah, man, you'll make so much money on this. And I've actually seen that several times. I've been in a property that I wanted to sell because I knew it wasn't going to cash flow, but the realtor, not knowing my background, the realtor came up and was like, yeah, you should turn this into a rental and I can be your property manager, it wouldn't have worked out. Right. So don't just trust a person's opinion, especially if they're not really, really doing it as they're presenting themselves. So perfect plug, realtor. You know, me and Mike, we find and vet realtors. So if you're looking for a realtor in your local market, please let us know and we'll help you out there. So that's awesome, man. That's good stuff, Keith. Is there anything from that you've learned from the military? I mean, you know, obviously you're in the reserves right now. Is there anything that you've learned in the military that's helped you out as an investor? If so, what is that? And what are some of those things?
I would say kind of like action in the absence of orders is probably like a big one. Just going, because I get so many people that call and whatnot, and they want kind of advice and the most frustrating thing. And now I know guys that have mentored me before, and some guys that are like, you know, have echelons and echelons of success beyond what I may ever even have. Like they will actually, like, they'll get pissed if you don't take action. Like, and they're like, you know, I just spent an hour of my time telling you what to do, and now you're calling me back 2 weeks later and basically asking the same questions. Like, you either take action this time, or I'm literally not going to give you advice anymore. Like, that's it. And so I would say just getting out there and going. I mean, you know, things aren't going to happen for you, and it's just a thing that you got to do, and you got to be willing to accept the fact that you know, things may not work out and it may not be the right answer, but you'll be one answer closer to the right answer if it's not. So yeah.
I love that. I've never heard that on the podcast. Action in the absence of orders. But for all the military men and women out there, we know what that means. And one of my old leadership, he mentioned to me, he said, what's the purpose of having standard operating procedures, SOPs? He was like, it's so you know what to do in the absence of orders, right? So you can kind of kick in. And guys, ultimately, it's all about taking action. Like Keith said, if we tell you, if you call me and we're on the phone for 2 hours and I create a game plan for you to execute, if you call me back next week and ask me what to do, don't call me, man. Don't call me. Like, just if you haven't, you know, started that process, you guys have to respect, you know, your mentor's time or whatever the case is. Take action, guys. Do it. Oh, I love it. Action in the absence of orders. I'm getting that
long-term
Nice. Well, I don't know if any of the shops are open. You might have to wait till after COVID.
I might have to wait.
So long-term investing, man. Long-term investing. What are you ever going to jump into any other type of asset class or any other type of investing? Maybe any kind of short-term stuff, like, you know, short-term rentals or flipping or wholesaling or anything like that? Or are you just mainly sticking to the long-term? If so, why?
Yeah, I would like to get more multidimensional in what I do. Absolutely. I'm just kind of analyzing that right now. And actually, I'm glad you said that, because last month I actually went to Myrtle Beach because we're looking to buy an investment property, an oceanfront condominium that'll be kind of an Airbnb here eventually. So I've been looking at that, and the only thing that's kind of slowed me down as far as taking action, because I have to practice what I preach here, is kind of getting a little bit intimately familiar with how these HOAs are doing, because I've learned through one of my condos up north here in Illinois that kind of HOAs can be sometimes healthier than others. Thankfully, I've got a very good one. Goes up about 1% a year, which is, you know, below industry average. But there's some out there that are grossly mismanaged. So if any viewers are considering buying, say any property that's falls under the umbrella of an HOA, I would highly suggest that you go find the documents. Sometimes you can find them right online for their meeting minutes. Some meet quarterly, some meet monthly, and you kind of read those, because I was like, man, I love this place. I'm going to put an offer in, but man, $950 a month for HOA is a lot of money. So I'm not going to say the name of the association. So I go and I look, and sure enough, they were $450,000 over their budget last year, in just like almost every category. So you'll see an item. They're super transparent. So it doesn't get much more transparent than an HOA as far as their budget and whatnot. And And so like one was like a random $40,000 legal fee, and nobody could tell me what it was for. Yeah, and then their fee from the year before was like $3,000, and it jumped to like 40,000. Another was some like kind of random repairs that they had passed on, like special assessments to the residents. So that was one thing that, so that's something that for viewers, like, definitely keep that in mind, is that cap rate might look great in the description of the bio of the property, whatever the case may be. But then if you end up getting slapped with a special assessment, and then the next year your HOAs go up, that's a very, very easy way for a seller to deceptively market a cap rate that really isn't there. So yeah,
numbers always look excellent, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of great topics. You really dropped some serious knowledge. I hope our listeners are getting something from this. I'm sure they are if they're listening. So it's good stuff. Great, excellent stuff. If there was one piece of advice that you could give to any first-time investor or anyone out there listening that wants to replicate some of the success that you've had, what would that be?
Kind of falls in line with a little bit of what I said earlier, kind of just taking action. I would say buy as much as you can, as young as you can, and just continue to grow. Find something that meets the numbers, and go with it and make it happen. And then it gets easier and easier. Like I said, by my like 10th, 12th deal, I didn't even need to see the property in person. It's like I sent somebody in there to do a very informal inspection, a property manager or whatnot. Because if you're getting a loan, a non-conventional loan from a bank, a lot of times you don't even have to go through the FHA processes of taking on that expense of a full-fledged inspection and all those things. So yeah, I would say just taking action and buying as much as you can, as fast as you can.
I love it.
Excellent. Hey, so how can our viewers get in contact with you, Keith?
Yeah, absolutely. I can be reached through my LinkedIn, which I think you guys are going to attach to this video, as well as Facebook Messenger. You can hit up our Facebook page, Property UNLTD. That's Uniform November Lima Tango Delta. And so we have a Facebook page there. Also, propertyunltd@gmail.com. I can be emailed. Don't have a fax anymore since 2020, but if I did, I'd give you that as well.
All right, excellent. Hey, so all that is going to be down in the show notes. Just make sure you check that out if you want to link up with Keith. If you want to find out about the Springfield market and these crazy 15% ROI freaking single families around there, then definitely link up with Mr. Keith Burke. He'll talk about his long-term real estate investing and help you out in that regard. So everything will be down in the show notes.
I got one question before we wrap it up. Keith, is Springfield, Illinois, where The Simpsons is based out of?
I don't think so. So I believe that the Simpsons movie, and I don't watch as much Simpsons as I probably should, but I believe in the Simpsons movie they said it was like in Massachusetts or something, didn't they?
Okay. I don't remember. I just figured it would be like a big sign if it was Springfield, Illinois, like on the front, like "Welcome to home of the Simpsons" or something.
I actually rent to Mr. Burns. No.
No way.
Nice.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, that's crazy. Or you just got a sign that says "dope," like "do." But yeah. So thanks a lot, Keith. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Yeah, it was great conversation. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so we can continue to make these great videos. Make sure you comment below if you have any questions for Keith. Or just any questions in general, make sure we get those answered. If you're listening to this on podcast, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. We really appreciate that. Lastly, the Facebook group. We got a Military Cashflow Facebook group. Keith's on there, Mike's on there, I'm on there. We got over 600 military members, service members on there, aspiring and active investors on there. We're all sharing information, helping each other grow. You'll get to hear and see great stories like Keith just outlined. You get that knowledge, and you can reach out and network with other service members that are exactly like you. We're same Same. You know, we're serving the country and we're trying to help each other out. Yeah. So, so make sure you join the group, add value. Don't be an asshole. Make sure you're freaking commenting and, you know, leaving some information there. Really appreciate that, Mike.
Yep. And so guys, if you guys are looking to do some long-term real estate investing, but you don't have that real estate agent in your market, as we've just mentioned before in this episode, and we always mention, let us know. We have partnered with many different agents, and if we don't have one in your market, we will find one and we'll make sure that we vet them so they understand your strategy, they understand your intent, and they help you the most efficiently as possible, or the most efficient way as possible. And by all means, this is free for you guys. This is what we are doing to give back to the community. So just let us know.
All right. With that, this is Dan Wynn
And Mike Glaspie
signing off.